have one question for you. Have you heard of the Button Man? Perhaps if you pay close attention to news articles that come out of Victoria, Australia. But for the majority of you, I would wager this is someone that you've never heard of. So, who is the Button Man? He's somewhat of a local legend around Victoria, but he's certainly no fictional figure. He's very much real, alive and well. Out there right now, tucked into a remote little camp on the side of a mountain near the Unanswered Valley. But to understand why we're talking about this oddball hermit, we need to first talk about someone else. Russell Hill. Russell Hill, age 74, an avid outdoorsman and member of the local radio club, also involved in an extramarital affair with Carol Clay, age 73 for decades. On March 19, 2020, Russell Hill and Carol Clay departed their cozy homes on the outskirts of Melbourne to head 200 kilometers northeast for a secluded camping trip in the Unanswered Valley, the Button Man's stomping grounds. The trip seemingly started out well enough. March 20th, the day after the departure, Russell Hill radios a friend from a remote station in the mountains. He's able to check in but cites that there are transmission issues. He says that he has to go because it's getting dark, but he promises to call back the next day. It's the last time the elderly couple are ever heard from again. March 21st, the day of the disappearance. Russell Hill's Toyota Land Cruiser is found abandoned with minor fire damage, parked directly next to a completely burnt-out campsite where the couple was staked out at. And detectives arrived to discover that the couple's sleeping bags, cell phones, and Mr. Hill's drone used for aerial photography are all missing completely. The campsite appears to have been picked clean and then razed to the ground. Over the next 2 months, multiple search missions are deployed over the Victorian Alps, involving helicopters, volunteers, dog squads, and park officials. Nothing is found. No pieces of evidence arise. The only revelation comes in the form of a rumor. A name of a local wild man who several campers in the area have encountered is brought forward. The Button Man. Some locals call him Buttons, a cute name in a stark juxtaposition of his reportedly terrifying and intimidating aura. The Button Man, or Buttons, is cited as being around 70 years old, but unbelievably fit and able to move with the agility of someone half his age. He's a notorious loner and expert bushman who is known to disappear for weeks or even months at a time. He earned his namesake due to his hobby of using deer antlers to make buttons, which he then uses as large plugs for his gauged ears. He is known to camp on the side of a remote mountain with a strategic position that lets him see anyone approaching. His lifestyle is simple. He uses snares to catch deer, and he hunts with expertly crafted indigenous-style spears, similar to ones that have been used by the Aborigines of the area for generations. However, he can be known to be territorial. Most campers and hunters who frequent the area have stories of the Button Man approaching them at their campsites once it gets dark. He's said to creep up on you like a ghost. He has short, gray hair and outfits himself in dark clothing to retain an element of surprise. Only a few have cited reports of actual threats or violence, but most have described him as intimidating and downright scary. He's known to question everyone who visits his stomping grounds about why they're in his vicinity, but refuses to answer any questions about himself. One experienced bushman who had an encounter with him states that he has a 1,000-meter stare that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. And even more unnerving is that you'll never know he's near you until he decides to make himself known. One disturbing account comes from a wildlife photographer who spent days taking shots in the area near Button Man's camp. When he had returned home and downloaded his photos to his computer, There was one unexplained photo of himself asleep inside of his tent. No one knows who took the shot. It's speculated that this was Button Man's way of sending a message to stay out of his territory. Ever vigilant and always watching, the Button Man is said to build rock pyramids in random locations and place piles of pebbles on the roads to know if a car has passed by. Some outdoorsmen who frequented the area have hidden firewood or other supplies in crevices, only to return and find their stash missing. They say someone must have been watching them carefully to know the exact location. One account comes from an experienced hunter who says that he woke up at around 11 p.m. for a night hunt, only to find the Button Man camped directly next to him. He had approached in silence, seemingly out of nowhere. Police from the Missing Persons Squad became increasingly aware of these stories as their investigation continued. This prompted them to hike into a remote area near where the Button Man was rumored to have his base. He was found perched on a high point in the Alpine National Park, and it's said that he reluctantly complied with police, answering their queries related to the disappearance of Russell Hill and Carol Clay. He was not accused of any wrongdoing, as there was no evidence tying him to the disappearances, but this didn't stop the speculation. In fact, this recent disappearance only added fuel to the fire for those who have been paying attention to local hearsay. There have been several disappearances in the exact same area, several recently, but some dating back as far as 2008. Niles Becker, age 39, another experienced bushwalker. Niles went for a solo 5-day hike near the same location in Victoria's Alpine National Park on October 24th, 2019. He was well equipped and very familiar with the area. His hike seemed to have been going well. He had sent a message to his family that he was returning to his car, and he was roughly 6 or 7 hours from completing his journey before he vanished into thin air. The last confirmed sighting of Niles came from the Button Man himself. He told police that he saw him in his area and complied with all questioning. Despite this, the police using over 70 people to search for Niles Becker, he was never seen again. The case has gone cold. Conrad Whitlock, age 72, drove into Button Man territory in July of 2019. His wife says that she last saw her husband when they went to bed together at around 11:30 p.m. the night of his disappearance. When she awoke at 5:30 a.m., he was no longer there. No one knows why Conrad drove to the remote mountains in the first place, but his white BMW was found in the area with his jacket, cell phone, and keys all still inside. Another man who vanished without a trace and was never heard from again. Police combed the area extensively, but no evidence was found. David Prideaux, age 50, and a passionate bush hunter. On June 5th, 2011, he went deer hunting with his brother-in-law in Victoria's Alpine National Park. He hasn't been seen since. No traces of Prideaux or any of his belongings have ever been found. These are not the only missing persons cases from this area, but they are some of the most recent. All very close together, all without a shred of evidence as to what happened. The Button Man's name has been brought up individually as a rumor every time, but without concrete proof. It's all just hearsay. The last man Russell Hill ever contacted on his radio the night of his disappearance was his long-standing friend and fellow radio club member, Robbie Ashland. Ashland recounted that Hill and another friend of theirs had encountered the Button Man back in 2019, since they often frequented the area. Reportedly, he was agitated and informed the group that he didn't want them camping there anymore. Ashland also mentions that Hill had been in the same area about a week before his disappearance, supposedly flying his drone near Button Man's camp. Perhaps his activity and refusal to heed the Button Man's warning caused him to take action. The case is still under investigation. Perhaps we'll never know the truth about any of these mysterious rural Australian disappearances. Maybe the butt man is just an innocent, oddball loner who happens to get his name brought up as a scapegoat for otherwise natural disappearances. Or maybe there's a more sinister side to this local legend. Whichever may be the case, he's still perched up in his mountainous cove right this very minute, waiting, watching.